after that first rental, I hired a coach and they taught me how to flip houses using other people's money. So I just started running with that. And I did that for 6 years, and 90% of my business was flipping houses. 10% was buying rental properties. And I had a buddy, we actually started investing at the same time. We actually went to realtor school together, which we both got licensed, and then we started investing. So that's how I met him. And, we stay in contact. We talk every month or two. And one day I was talking to him. His business was the opposite of mine. He always bought 90% rentals, 10% flips. So completely, inverse to what I was doing. And early on, the first few years, he was like, bro, you're traveling, you're living life, like you're enjoying it. Like, bro, how are you making all this money? I'm like, I'm just flipping houses. Like, what do you mean? And then, years later, he had built his portfolio. And one of the calls that I was on with him, I was like, yo, what's going on? What's new? And he was like, man, I just did a refinance on part of my portfolio. I was like, all right, cool. Talk to me about what that looks like. He's like, well, I took 30 of my houses. Keep in mind, at this point, he had close to 200. He said, I took 30 of my houses and I refinanced it and I paid off 10 of them. So that alone, 10 houses in Columbus, Ohio at the time is roughly about $1,000 per month net. So he created 120 grand of passive residual income for the rest of his life, and then re-leveraged the other 20 houses, which, probably make $2,000 to $3,000 a month net. So on one transaction, he created $150,000 of net passive residual income per year on one transaction. But the kicker was, on top of that, he was like, on top of that, I pulled out $1 million tax free. I was like, come again? He's like, yeah, I pulled $1 million out on top of all that. And keep in mind, like, refi proceeds are non-taxable. So $1 million on a refi is like netting $1.5 million in the real world. And up to that point in my career, I've never netted $1.5 million in a year, let alone a single transaction. And it was like, all right, I'm playing the wrong game. And the next day I went into my office and I literally changed the entire business model, started building a portfolio. So that was probably 4-ish years ago. And, I have 170-ish rental properties, valued somewhere between $30 and $35 million, mostly single families, but we've done small multis, we've done warehouses, we've done office buildings, we've done a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that is such a powerful strategy. I started similar to you, probably around the same time, actually, 2012-ish is when we started our flipping company, and flipped a lot of houses around Chicago. And we were so focused on flips the same way that I look back, I'm like, of the 75 houses that we flipped, had I kept 10%, 20% of them, man, they'd be worth 2 or 3 times at least what I sold them for. So, and I was selling them to these hedge funds. BlackRock was a big buyer, and I was kind of laughing at them, going, sophisticated buyers. They're not even doing an inspection; they're paying top dollar. I'm like, these guys are going to lose their shirt, and now they're the ones laughing, holding this property that's worth 3 times as much. 10 years later. So,
100%. I think it's one, you don't know what you don't. I was in the same boat, but you don't know what you don't know. But number two, personally speaking, I look back and I got caught, chasing, social media or chasing what it looked like everybody else was doing.
Yeah.
And everybody else was like, oh, we're doing 100K a month. We're doing 500K a month. I was like, I got to do that. Yeah. And the problem with, chasing those things is, one, those numbers are never real, right? Doing 100K a month and netting 100K a month are drastically different things. You can do $100,000 a month and still lose money. Mm-hmm. So, make sure you're not chasing something just because it looks cool on social media. When I went in and I changed my business model, what we did is I figured out what my monthly overhead was, including paying myself a salary. And then I added $10,000, $20,000 on top of that, because the business obviously has to turn a profit. And then I was like, cool, the first $40,000 or $50,000 in the door, we're going to wholesale and flip. So I can pay my team, I can pay my expenses, I can pay a profit for the year. Every single deal after that, we're going to add to the portfolio. So instead of continuously chasing an endless number that never stops, netting 100K a month, 200K a month, 300K a month, whatever it is, it will literally never stop. So instead of doing that, finding a number that you're comfortable with that can cover the expenses, that can show a profit, and putting a line in the sand and just, sticking to that. And every deal past that number, you add it to the portfolio. So looking back, that's what I wish I would have done. Instead of chasing those numbers and, flipping to all these hedge funds thinking I was crushing it, If I'd have kept, again, 10, like you said, 10, 20, 30, 40% of those, it'd be night and day difference right now.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a smart way to do it, because we fell in that same trap of just continuing to grow the overhead. As we were growing, we got an office and we started building this like little mini call center where we had all these people responding to, the leads that we were putting out, which, tens of thousands of dollars worth of marketing going out the door. And then, we weren't super efficient about it. So a lot of leads would kind of slip through the cracks. But then at some point I had this realization. I'm like, we're working 90% of the month just to survive, just to pay our obligations for the month. And then hopefully there's some little bit left over at the end of the month so we can start back over again next month. And that's when I really got into rentals. So I appreciate that advice. So in terms of how you evaluate what's a deal for you today, like what metrics do you look at to determine yes or no, it's not worth my time?
Yeah, so we look at two numbers. We stopped really kind of dealing in the single family space, so we're dealing with either new construction and or commercial properties. So commercial can be multifamily, but it's bigger deals, right? So that's one thing that we did this year. But I guess even with those deals and all the deals I've ever done in the past, there's really kind of two numbers that we focus on. One is a DSCR, debt service coverage ratio. So it's basically kind of tells you your profitability on a deal to make sure that you can cover your debt and show a profit on top of that. It also, is what allows you to refinance on the back end. So that's the first thing. We look for a minimum of a 1.2. Obviously, we want it higher than that. So that's number one. And then number two is our cash in a deal. So on a refinance, in a perfect world, when we refi, we pull out cash on top of all of our investments, and that's, tax-free profit. So that's the perfect world. Obviously every deal isn't a great deal. So ideally we want to be at net zero. So, we do the deal, we pull, we're able to pay off our obligations, and, we don't have any money in the deal. So that's the ideal scenario. What we're willing to do though, at this point in our career, because we have profits that we show, we're willing to keep in the dollar amount that gives us the equivalent tax break. So if we got to keep $20K in this deal, if we do a cost seg on it, is that going to set off a $20,000 tax obligation? So those are the two numbers that we really focus on. And if both of those numbers work, typically, the rest of the numbers in the deal, make sense behind that.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned that you've gotten into some larger deals now. I saw the YouTube video you did from the big commercial industrial complex that you bought and rehabbed. How did that deal come about?
Yeah. So it came about. I actually went into contract on a property like a block away from that. So I was born and raised and lived and grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I currently live in South Florida. So a broker sent it to me, looked decent. So we put it in contract, and then I flew in to do an inspection. And when I got there, it was just a really weird layout. So we passed on the deal. So when I was driving home, literally like a block down the street, like you can throw a rock and hit it, I drove by this big 60,000 square foot warehouse, multi-tenant industrial complex. And it was it was rough. There's potholes in the driveway. There was holes in the roof. There were gutters hanging off. I drove by and I looked at it and I was like, I'm going to buy that place. And, a year and a half later, almost 200 phone calls deep, calling the owners, the brothers, the sisters, the nieces, the nephews, direct mail, handwritten letters, everything in between. We finally actually got the deal to the closing table and bought it for a great price. And, it worked out. So just driving for dollars and cold calling. That's how that one came about.
Jeez. Wow. It's incredible what is attractive to an investor when you see gutters hanging off, potholes, and building falling apart. You're like, that's the one I want. So has it gone as you've thought it would? In terms of
yeah,
the project.
There's a couple variables to it. we put it in contract for close to $2 million at first. Got it inspected. Needed a lot of structural foundation work, so got like $150,000 price discount from there. So we bought it for just over $1.8 million. We plan to put $1.4 million into the renovation. We ended up spending about $1.8 million. And then we planned for one entire year of vacancies to do all that construction and get it leased, in a hold of 2 years. And we got the construction done in about 6 months.
Wow.
And we're now back at 100% occupancy, 11 months, actually 10 months from us purchasing it. So we're actually in the refi process. So we'll be completely done in less than a year. And the rent, which determines the value, the income does. We're 20% higher than what we projected. So we definitely blew the budget by about 400 grand, but we're going to make it up on the back end with the rent. So
Wow.
it ended up working out. Yeah.
What do you think it'll appraise for at the end?
Six is a no brainer. I think it'll be 6.5.
Wow.
If you look at based on cap rates, it'll be 7 to 8.
Wow.
So I just want 6.5. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of equity built in a 10-month period. So, wow, huge project. So, I mean, it's basically the exact same process though. It's so funny because we just talked through the BRRRR model on $150,000 property, one that appraises for 200 afterwards and you get 150 back. And now we're talking about one that's 6 million, but it's the exact same process.
Literally the same process. And I think for those listening, my entire career up until a few years ago, I would get, there's a 10,000 square foot warehouse I could have bought for 200 grand. It's probably worth $1 million now. And I vividly remember looking at that and I was like, how do I even analyze this deal?
Yeah.
I actually looked at it. So it's a huge, big warehouse. And my analyzation was chopping it up into small office spaces. And who does that, right? You just buy it, place a triple net tenant and call it a day. It's really simple. But you didn't know what you didn't know, right? So I encourage those, on listening here, if you kind of are in the single family, smaller multifamily space, don't be so scared of bigger deals. Yes, be more cautious, do your due diligence, because if you mess up by 5%, it's a much bigger number on a bigger deal. But as long as you're doing your due diligence properly, it's the same process. It just has more zeros on it. So yes, theoretically there is more risk, but there's significantly more upside, more profit as well. So something I would have done. One, kept more rentals that we were talking about earlier. But number two, I wish I'd have gone into bigger deals sooner. And, I paid a massive ignorant tax for a lot of years because I just never took the time, energy, and effort to learn, how to even do these bigger deals.
Mm. Yeah. And I think for people listening to this, one of the biggest roadblocks that comes up for them when they start hearing about big deals or thinking about big deals is, the bank's going to give you a portion of that, but that's a lot of private money. I have to borrow from someone else to cover the down payment and, all the rehab costs. So can you share a bit more about how you raise money? I know that's your kind of expertise. You've been doing it for over a decade now. What's that process look like? And what would you recommend to somebody who's brand new to it?
For sure. I think the first step is when I first started raising money, I thought I was asking somebody. I was asking them to believe in me. I was asking them to invest their life savings with me. I'm just this 21-year-old punk kid. I'm asking everybody for these favors. Once you realize the actual power of private money, you realize it's not an ask at all. So it's not an ask at all. So when you're going into this, you're like, I want to go raise private money. Number one is understand that you're giving somebody an opportunity of a lifetime. It's definitely mutually beneficial. There's benefits on both sides, clearly, but you are giving somebody an opportunity of a lifetime. And I say that because I wish I had a board behind me. I'm going to try to do it with my hands for those watching. But most people's plan for retirement, you got to understand this, the mass majority of the population is planning for retirement is to work and, save up money, till they hit 65-ish and have a big enough nest egg to be able to retire on. We're just going to use $1 million, for example, just for round numbers. So people work their entire lives to maybe save $1 million. And then from that point, they budget and plan to, make a conservative ROI. So invest their money conservatively, make 3, 4, 5%, whatever the number is, and then have enough money to spend to enjoy their life until they die. So people's plan is to save up enough money and then hopefully they have money before they die. That's the typical kind of retirement plan. And the problem is that if they live longer than what they expected, then they don't have any money and they got to go work again. And
Yeah.
if they, do, let's say they time it perfectly, they die at zero. Guess what? They give their kids and their family nothing. They give them $0. So the opposite of that, which if that's people's plans, what you can offer them is, the same person saves up, has $1 million nest egg. Instead of them, trying to plan this retirement thing to spend money at the right rate, you can take that $1 million, let's call it 12%. You can pay them $120,000 per year in interest, which is much more money than they would ever be able to spend on their own through their budgeting. I've done the math; it's roughly like $70,000 to $80,000. So you can pay them, 50% more than what they're living on, and you can pay it forever. Right? There's no, time that runs out of you paying them interest. And when they die, they give their kids $1 million inheritance, which then you can keep investing and keep paying $120,000 a year instead of zero. So like I got goosebumps every time I explain this to people because like I felt like I was asking somebody. And that's the alternative. I feel like I'm doing somebody a complete entire disservice by not telling them about the opportunity to invest with me. And everyone's not going to listen to you. It's just like talking to sellers. You got to talk to 100 sellers to get one person to agree to sell you the house at the price that you need it at. Same thing with private money. Like I talk to every person I come across in life, and I only have, I don't know, 20, 30 people that have lent me money. So it's a numbers game, but you got to have the confidence in yourself that you are giving somebody an opportunity, because that's the only way they're going to feel the same. When I talk about it, people feel me. And that's why I think I'm able to raise money. So that's the first step, is changing your mindset on money and believe you're giving people an opportunity.
Yeah. Wow. That's super powerful what you just shared there. Because if you think about it, like I just want to break it down if people weren't following the math there. But so somebody saves $1 million to retirement. Most financial planners out there say, plan on a 4%, a 4% withdrawal rate to not dip in your principal. So if you want to just maintain that $1 million till you die and ensure that nest egg stays there, then withdraw 4%. So that means you can withdraw $40,000 a year, as opposed to what you just said. You can give them a 12% interest only payment of $120,000 per year. And that $1 million stays $1 million until they pass away, and that goes to their family. So, I had a similar realization in the beginning. Like it was tough. Like, laying awake at night thinking, oh man, I have to borrow this much money from my friends and family. And, what if I lose it and stuff? But the fact is, these are on tangible assets that are going up in value and kicking off a ton of cash flow over time. So not only are you giving them this incredible return, they have this asset that is not going to zero, like the stock market could, or a business could. People always need a place to live, and they can see it, feel it, and touch it, and they're in a secured position on it. So,
I mean, it's like if someone asks you, like, hey, would you buy Tesla today at 75% of what it's worth today? And Elon Musk signs a personal guarantee for you, and he brings an insurance policy just in case anything happens. How would you buy Tesla shares? Duh. Everybody and their mother would do that. And again, it's the same thing. It's just a way different product, which nobody ever talks about. So there's an education curve that you have to give people with it.